Have you ever found yourself stepping into a new situation? Maybe you're about to kick off a big presentation or meeting someone totally new or even just, launching into a new project, and that little voice pops up asking, how do I even begin this effectively? It's that really critical moment where you need to grab attention, set the right tone, and just, well, nail it from the very start.
Oh, it truly is a universal challenge, isn't it? Whether you're standing in front of a classroom or maybe leading a high-stakes business meeting or even just starting a casual chat at some networking event, that initial connection is just, well, everything. It
Yeah.
really sets the stage for all the stuff that follows.
Absolutely, it does. And that's precisely what we're going to dive into today on the deep dive. We're exploring the art and the science of crafting a truly engaging introduction. And we're going far beyond just like the specific words you say. We're looking at the why behind making a great first impression that really sticks and how to make that happen consistently.
Yeah, our mission for this deep dive is to really pull out the most essential nuggets of wisdom from a pretty diverse stack of sources. We've pulled insights from, well, everywhere. Educational guides on classroom stuff, research on effective language learning, resources on crafting podcasts, kind of like this one, and even just everyday tips for English conversation. Our goal is to arm you with the tools to grab attention, set that perfect tone, and really invite genuine engagement right from that first moment.
So what does all this mean for your next introduction? For that next big pitch you have coming up, or that family gathering where you're meeting new relatives, or maybe even just kicking off your next online meeting? Let's unpack this.
Okay, so one of the most fascinating patterns we found across all our sources is how many different fields really emphasize the exact same core principle for introductions, which is attention is the first goal. You simply can't move forward without it, period.
Yeah, I found it really fascinating how one source, looking at classroom techniques, highlights this thing called call and response. You immediately think of a teacher saying, 1, 2, 3, eyes on me. And the kids reply, 1, 2, eyes on you.
Right. It seems simple, but it's actually a pretty profound insight into human attention. It teaches us that effectively prompting an immediate, focused response, maybe with a shared phrase, a compelling question, or even just a sudden change in your tone, can instantly cut through all that mental clutter and recenter pretty much any audience.
Yeah.
From a kid in a classroom to a room full of busy executives.
And it's not just a classroom trick either. That same source points out how call and response is used way beyond education. You see it in sports to rally the crowd, at concerts to get the audience fired up, even in military drills for immediate unified action. It's all about creating a clear, almost instinctive cue for that immediate engagement. Which is so vital because, let's be honest, attention spans are a real challenge these days in our hyper-connected world. Oh, absolutely. Another source really breaks down attention spans pretty starkly. It suggests a general guideline of like 2 to 3 minutes per year of a child's age. So a 2-year-old might only give you 4 to 6 minutes max. And even a 10-year-old, you're looking at maybe 20 to 30 minutes before their mind starts to wander. And if we're truly honest with ourselves, adults aren't that different. Think about sitting through a long meeting. How quickly do you lose focus if the beginning isn't grabbing you? We all need that initial hook to keep us, dialed in.
Which brings us neatly to a key insight from another source, this one focused on making educational podcasts, actually. They strongly advise that in your opening, you should immediately answer 2 critical questions for your listener. First, what are you going to explain? And second, maybe even more importantly, why is it relevant to them?
That's such a fantastic point. Because it's about giving the listener an immediate reason to care right from the get-go. Our sources suggest that starting with a strong main question, or maybe even tackling a common misconception right at the start, can immediately engage your audience. It gives them focus and makes the content feel immediately relevant. It's almost like saying, hey, this deep dive, it's for you, and here's precisely why you should stick around.
Which then raises an important question. Okay, how do you get someone comfortable enough to even receive that information? That's where this idea of lowering the barrier to entry comes into play. One source introduces Stephen Krashen's concept of the affective filter. Basically, if someone's feeling anxious or intimidated or just plain uncomfortable, their brain kind of puts up this barrier to new information or engagement. So a good introduction needs to actively try and lower that filter, making the listener feel at ease and ready to participate.
It's so true, isn't it? Think about walking into a new environment. If you can't hear the speaker clearly, or the visuals are bad, or you just feel out of place, it immediately creates a barrier. Another source, for instance, really emphasizes how clear maybe amplified audio in a classroom, and you can extend that to any speaking environment, enhances comprehension. And it boosts confidence right from the outset. It helps foster a sense of belonging because everyone feels equally included, equally able to understand. It's incredibly difficult to engage if you're straining to hear or just feel like an outsider. That initial comfort is just foundational.
Indeed. So once you've managed to capture that initial attention and made people feel reasonably comfortable, the next step is strategically structuring your introduction for maximum impact.
Right, that idea of setting the stage clearly, it sounds a lot like what one source talks about when they say every story needs a clear beginning, middle, and ending to guide the audience. The introduction, then, is obviously that crucial opening part. It's where you establish the fundamental structure for everything that's going to follow.
And what's truly fascinating here is how universally this applies, even down to the most basic human interactions. One of our sources, focusing on teaching English to beginners, really stresses the importance of teaching relevant and practical content and teaching functional language over just, handing out isolated vocabulary lists.
Exactly. Like, don't just give someone a list of 20 animal names out of the blue. Instead, teach them how to say, hello, my name is, or how are you? Because those are the functional building blocks, the actual introductions to a real flowing conversation. It's about equipping them for immediate use.
Precisely. Other sources we looked at, like ones with common questions and answers, illustrate this beautifully. We learned simple call and response pairs like, how are you? And then a whole range of natural answers. No complaints or a little under the weather or just, I'm good, thanks. These aren't just words. They're immediate practical interactions that actually open a dialogue.
Yeah, and that's where another source comes in. They explain how structured dialogues in language learning provide a really clear framework for realistic exchanges. They help learners see what can be said and at what point. This is basically the foundational blueprint for starting any conversation naturally, whether you're asking about someone's day or, where they're from. You're giving people the necessary structure for interaction, not just a random pile of words.
Okay, so once you have that structure kind of mapped out in your mind, the delivery of your introduction becomes absolutely paramount. It's not just about what you plan to say, but how you actually bring it to life.
And a major, really consistent theme across all our sources here is that clarity and simplicity are key. Absolutely key. Several sources strongly advocate for keeping it simple. They recommend using short sentences, often around 10 words or so, active language, and familiar words. One even suggests reading your text aloud to check for natural flow and to avoid stumbling. If you're tripping over your own words, your audience certainly will be too.
Yeah, and this is precisely where tailoring your language comes in so importantly. One source offers a great example. For an absolute beginner, you might phrase an instruction very simply like, listen, what color is David's shirt? It's direct, uses simple words, and you can even use gestures to support it. But for a more advanced learner, you might phrase it differently, like, okay, let's check out the audio and see what she says about David's shirt. The core message is similar, but the complexity of the language is carefully matched to the audience's ability to process it without, too much effort.
It really is about meeting your audience where they are. And beyond just the words themselves, there's the undeniable power of nonverbal cues and making that direct connection. Several sources highlight the importance of visual aids and gestures, especially for initial comprehension. Now, for an audio deep dive like this one, that translates more into using vivid, descriptive language that helps you, the listener, visualize what we're talking about, even without actually seeing it.
Right. And another source really drives home how much impact your delivery has, right from the very first word. It underscores the importance of language modeling, basically, using proper pronunciation and intonation. This isn't just about sounding polished. It actually builds understanding and trust. It lays the groundwork for a native-like speaking ability.
Yeah.
Which is just crucial for rapport and comprehension. It's not just what you say, but how you say it that really shapes perception.
And to really foster that immediate bond, one source advises to directly address the audience using words like we together to create a sort of community of learners. Instead of a detached I or they, it immediately becomes a shared journey. Like we are together in this deep dive exploring these ideas right now.
Yeah, that instantly creates a sense of shared purpose, which is so vital for keeping attention and engagement going. What's also incredibly valuable, particularly when you're introducing maybe new concepts or language, is strategic repetition. One source suggests repetition in language learning, things like drilling or chanting phrases, to help internalize those functional language chunks.
Okay, well, while we're certainly not going to start chanting here on the deep dive, for an introduction like this idea translates more to strategically reinforcing the core message of your opening. You do it through clear, consistent messaging. You might not repeat the exact same phrase over and over, but you keep circling back to the central idea you're introducing, making sure it sinks in and resonates with the listener. It's about thematic consistency, really.
Absolutely. And all of these elements, when you bring them together effectively, they build toward one goal, a truly successful introduction.
So how do you know if you've actually nailed it, if your introduction worked? One source, looking at measuring language learning progress, suggests that a truly effective introduction should lead to a few key things. Better comprehension, increased fluency, not just speaking speed, but fluency in the actual interaction, and more confidence for everyone involved. If people are understanding you, engaging back with you freely, and feeling comfortable and good about the exchange, well, you're definitely on the right track.
And that leads naturally to the final critical step, reflecting on and refining your own introductory approach. You can actually apply self-assessment techniques to your own introductions, much like a language learner might do. A force we looked at suggests recording yourself. Maybe it's a practice pitch or presentation run-through, or even just practicing a tricky conversation opener. Then listen back to identify areas for improvement in your opening remarks. It sounds a bit intense, I know, but it's incredibly effective.
Yeah, they also talk about using the SMART goal framework, like, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. Using that for refining how you craft and deliver your intros. For example, setting a goal like, I'm going to use 5 new business expressions this week. That could apply directly to how you kick off your next round of work conversations, making your introductions just that much more impactful.
This really highlights something interesting. If you see, as one source notes, rapid improvement in beginners and find that rewarding, doesn't that same principle apply to our own mastery of introductions? The more intentionally we practice and assess and refine, the faster we'll likely see our own progress in connecting and engaging better with others. It's truly a skill you can continuously hone.
It really is a continuous journey, isn't it? A bit like learning a new language. You're always refining those opening lines, always getting better at setting the stage. So, okay, to quickly recap our deep dive today into the art of the engaging introduction, it's really all about capturing attention right from that very first moment, setting clear expectations for what's coming, building confidence through clarity and comfortable delivery, and genuinely inviting engagement from your audience, making them want to listen.
And as you go about your week, we really encourage you to think about this. Think about the last time a conversation or maybe a presentation or even just a casual interaction truly hooked you right from the very first sentence. What was it about that opening that really resonated with you? And how can you take these principles we talked about, attention, clarity, invitation, and apply them not just to formal introductions, but maybe to every new interaction, turning them into your own sort of micro deep dives of connection and understanding? Something to think about.